America is the ultimate place to live? Think again. Australia doesn't just match up, it beats the US is in ways that truly matter, from safety and healthcare to education, quality of life, and even how people actually enjoy their lives. Australia is redefining what it means to live the dream. Here are 15 undeniable reasons why Australia offers more than what America does. By the end of this, you'll see how the land down under has become a lifestyle that the rest of the world looks up to. Let's dive in. Australia hasn't seen a single mass shooting since 1997. A whole generation has grown up without the fear of gun violence that shadows so many parts of the world, especially the United States. After the Port Arthur tragedy, Australia said enough. They changed their gun laws. And now parents can focus on the important things, like whether their kids have enough sunscreen, not whether they'll be safe at school. In many countries, kids are taught to hide from danger. In Australia, they're taught to explore. That's the kind of peace of mind strict gun laws have created. The US is a land of opportunity, no doubt, but it's also a country with a complicated past and a prison system that holds more people than any other Western nation. It makes you think, doesn't it? The quiet ease of walking home at night without a second thought. In many rural areas, life moves at a relaxed pace, with neighbours looking out for one another. And in cities, runners greet the sunrise at Bondi Beach with nothing but ocean air on their minds. Safety here isn't a privilege, it's a way of life. In Australia, getting sick doesn't mean going broke. Thanks to Medicare, citizens and permanent residents enjoy access to affordable or even free healthcare services. Need surgery? No problem. Seeing a doctor? Covered. In Australia, health is a right. No, what a privilege. It's a system that says we've got you no matter what's in your bank account. Now, let's talk about the US healthcare. There can feel like a roll of the dice. Without the right insurance, or none at all, families can end up buried in medical debt. Some even lose their homes over a hospital bill. In America, that's not a distant fear. It's a brutal reality for many. In Australia, people don't have to make impossible choices between health and stability. The focus isn't on who can pay, it's on making sure everyone can get the care they need. Quality education in Australia doesn't come with a hefty price tag. Government-funded primary and secondary schools ensure kids learn without the burden of expensive fees or outside interference. Higher education? It's a different story from what you'll find in the US. There, students often graduate with a degree and a mountain of debt that lingers for decades. It's a system where tuition fees dictate futures, leaving many stuck paying for their education long after they've left the classroom. Australia flips the script. Universities are publicly funded and programs like HEX help let students pay tuition based on their income. No crushing debt, no impossible trade-offs. Even the highest ranked universities are accessible to everyone. The result? An education system that prioritizes potential over privilege. It goes beyond academics, ensuring that anyone with the drive to succeed has access to the opportunities they need. In Australia, even low-skilled jobs provide a stable foundation for living. With a minimum wage of 16 to 17 USD an hour, almost double that of the US, workers can afford essentials without constantly worrying about making ends meet. This creates a level of financial security that many low-wage workers in other countries, including the US, can only dream of. According to 2023 statistics, Australia ranks second globally for the highest monthly minimum wage at $2,461, far outpacing the $1,200 $256 earned by workers in the United States. This vast difference underscores the contrast in labour policies, with Australia's focus on fair pay and worker protections ensuring even its most vulnerable citizens maintain a dignified standard of living. It's not only about wages, it's about having real opportunities. Australia has one of the largest middle-class populations in the world, with a much smaller gap between the wealthy and those doing it tough. For many, that means a fair chance to build a stable life and get ahead. You don't need a fancy job to reach financial stability. It feels possible whether you're working at a cafe or running your own business. If money's tight, living in Australia still feels manageable. Higher wages and solid worker protections mean you're not constantly worried about making ends meet. It's not about living a life of luxury. It's about the peace of mind that comes from knowing you've got a stable foundation. That's what makes life here not just livable, but genuinely fulfilling. In Australia, social welfare isn't just a backup plan, it's a safety net designed to catch you when life gets tough. Beyond healthcare and education, Australia stands out with a range of benefits that ensure no one is left behind. Lost your job? Don't panic. Unemployment benefits in Australia provide enough to keep you afloat while you search for your next opportunity. Contrast that with the US, where losing your paycheck often means spiraling into financial insecurity. Then there's superannuation, a retirement program that feels almost too good to be true. Imagine 9.5% of your income automatically set aside into a personal account, building up year after year. By the time you retire, you have a substantial nest egg waiting for you. Compare that to many Americans who rely on volatile 451k plans or social security checks that barely cover the basics. And let's not forget childcare subsidies, support for people with disabilities, and something Americans only dream of: 4 weeks of paid vacation every single year. Yes, that's on top of public holidays. Australia's approach is straightforward yet impactful. Ensure stability and dignity for all its citizens. Life here isn't about merely getting by. It's about thriving with the confidence that, in tough times, the system provides the support you need. In Australia, political accountability is more than a principle. It's a standard embedded in public life. Leaders who breach ethical expectations face immediate and tangible consequences. A striking example is Barnaby Joyce, the Deputy Prime Minister in 2018, who faced national scrutiny after admitting to an extramarital affair with his staff member, Vicky Campion, who later became his partner. The scandal extended beyond his personal life, sparking debates on ethics, the potential misuse of public funds, and the integrity expected of public officials. Within weeks of mounting public outrage, Joyce resigned as leader of the National Party and Deputy Prime Minister, reinforcing Australia's reputation for holding leaders accountable. In contrast, political scandals in some countries often unfold differently. In the United States, for instance, allegations of misconduct against high-ranking officials, including presidents, are often polarizing and can lead to drawn-out legal or political proceedings like impeachment. However, such cases rarely lead to actual removal from office, with acquittals being the common outcome. In Australia, getting from A to B is surprisingly simple. Cities like Sydney and Melbourne boast efficient, clean, and reliable public transport systems, connecting neighbourhoods, suburbs, and even nearby towns. With trains, trams, and buses running frequently, many Australians never need to own a car. Contrast this with the US, where outside a handful of cities, public transport can feel like a last resort. Most Americans spend hours stuck in traffic, navigating long commutes in their cars, and it's not just tiring, it's deadly. The US has one of the highest road fatality rates among developed nations, with deaths per kilometre driven far surpassing Australia. In Australia, public transport isn't just convenient, it's safer and far less stressful than battling traffic every day. Whether commuting or simply heading out, Australians enjoy a level of ease and safety that makes life on the move feel effortless. Australians outlive Americans, and the secret isn't complicated, it's how they live. Outdoor adventures like beach runs and weekend hikes aren't rare treats, they're part of daily life. Add to that a culture that values balance, with extended annual leave for recharging, and you've got a recipe for longevity. In Australia, work-life balance isn't a mere concept, it's a way of living. With a minimum of 4 weeks of mandatory annual leave, stepping away from work to recharge is not only encouraged, but ingrained in the culture. Whether it's unwinding by the coast or spending a relaxed day with family, taking time off is viewed as a necessity for well-being, not a luxury. Contrast this with the US, where work-life balance often feels like a myth. Limited vacation days and a hustle culture push many to prioritize work over rest, often at the expense of their health. Long hours and high-pressure jobs leave little room for physical activity. Fast food becomes a quick fix, and weekends, they're often spent catching up on work rather than catching some fresh air. This relentless grind leads to higher rates of obesity, chronic illness, and ultimately shorter lifespans. Meanwhile, Australians prioritise quality of life as much as longevity itself. By fostering balance and investing in their well-being, they've found the key not only to living longer, but also to living more meaningfully. In Australia, there's a real sense of togetherness, a belief in giving everyone a fair go. It's more than just a phrase, it shapes how Australians interact. From lending a hand to a neighbour to creating inclusive workplaces. Disagreements happen, but they rarely divide communities. In the US, it's a different story. Individualism runs deep, and people are often left to navigate challenges alone. Political and social divides have grown sharper, spilling into daily life, from family arguments to protests in the streets. That's not to say Australia is perfect. Inequality exists, but it feels less intense. Here, issues tend to bring people to the table for discussions rather than driving them apart. It's a society where shared values often win over differences, creating a stronger sense of unity. In Australia, the sky doesn't just feel endless, it feels safe. Natural disasters here are the exception, not the rule. While bushfires are a real concern during the dry season, the country is far less prone to hurricanes, tornadoes, or earthquakes compared to the US. This difference brings a kind of quiet stability to daily life. Think about it, in the US, extreme weather events are part of the landscape. Hurricanes tearing through the coasts, tornadoes sweeping the plains, and earthquakes shaking things up in places like California. These disasters can disrupt lives, upend communities, and rack up billions in damage. In Australia, the risks are more predictable and in many cases easier to manage. Residents are equipped to handle bushfires with safety protocols and preparedness plans, while the absence of constant weather threats allows for greater peace of mind. Life here doesn't feel like it's waiting for the next big storm. It feels grounded, secure, and steady. This goes beyond physical safety. It's about the peace of mind that comes from living in a place where natural disasters aren't a constant threat. Australians can devote their energy to building their futures rather than constantly preparing for the next disaster. In Australia, fresh air isn't a luxury, it's a daily gift. Thanks to strict environmental policies and an abundance of untouched natural landscapes, the air here is among the cleanest in the developed world. From the salty breeze along the coastline to the crisp mountain air in the hinterlands, every breath feels like a reminder of why Australians love the great outdoors. Now, picture many American cities. Smog from traffic and industry often clouds the skies. making a simple stroll feel less refreshing and more like a chore. Cities like Los Angeles and New York may offer iconic skylines, but their air quality can be a constant concern. In Australia, the difference is easy to notice. You can start your day with a jog by the beach, a walk through the eucalyptus forest, or a quiet coffee on the porch without worrying about smog. Clean air makes outdoor living a pleasure, where being outside feels refreshing, not like a chore. Every moment under those bright blue skies is something to appreciate. In Australia, food is more than fuel. It's a cultural adventure. Sure, barbecues and meat pies are iconic, but they're just the beginning of a vibrant culinary scene shaped by the country's multicultural roots. Imagine fresh seafood served seaside, Asian-inspired dishes sizzling in Sydney's bustling night markets, or farmed table experiences in small towns where every ingredient is as fresh as it gets. Now, think about the US, where fast food chains dominate the landscape. Convenience often takes priority over quality, and while there are incredible dining options in major cities, they're not always accessible for everyday meals. In Australia, meals are crafted with care and intention. Global flavours meet fresh local ingredients in dishes that reflect the country's cultural diversity. From the rich coffee traditions of Melbourne to the lively street food scene in Brisbane, dining is less about filling up and more about immersing yourself in the stories and flavours that define the community. When it comes to military power, there's no denying that the United States holds the crown. It boasts the strongest defence, the most advanced weaponry, and a presence in nearly every corner of the globe. But here's the catch. Being a superpower often comes with a target on your back. American involvement in global conflicts can make certain regions unsafe for its citizens, and even at home, heightened tensions can sometimes pose risks. Australia, on the other hand, plays a different game. While it maintains a capable and modern military, Australia is known for keeping a lower profile on the global stage. Rarely involved in major conflicts and with fewer adversaries, the country enjoys a reputation for neutrality that makes it a safer choice for its citizens, whether at home or abroad. Geography also lends a helping hand. Australia's remote location, surrounded by vast oceans, acts as a natural shield. In the unlikely event of global armed conflict, the nation's isolation provides an extra layer of protection, making it one of the safest places to be. Military strength alone doesn't define security, it's how that strength is applied that matters. While the US often asserts its power globally, Australia takes a measured approach, prioritising peace and creating a sense of safety that's rare in an uncertain world. For anyone drawn to the ocean or the untamed beauty of the outdoors, Australia feels like it was crafted just for you. This vast continent is a masterpiece of nature, offering climates and landscapes so varied they seem to encompass the entire planet. Now imagine this, over 10,000 beaches, the most of any country in the world. Australia's coastlines aren't crowded or chaotic like many in the US. They're peaceful sanctuaries where the sound of waves replaces the noise of busy boardwalks. Golden sands stretch endlessly, untouched and inviting, while the rhythm of nature sets a slower, gentler pace. In Melbourne, you might wake up to a brisk, chilly morning, bask in summer sunshine by noon, and feel winter's chill creep in by evening. Nature here doesn't just surround you, it engages with you, surprising and delighting at every turn. In contrast, many parts of the US feel urbanized, with nature often relegated to national parks or far-off escapes. While those parks are spectacular, they rarely integrate into daily life. In Australia, nature is seamlessly woven into every moment. You don't have to plan a trip to experience it. It's right there, inviting you outside every day. In Australia, equality feels woven into the social fabric. The wealth gap here is notably narrower compared to many other developed nations, including the US, where economic disparity often shapes access to opportunities. In Australia, the middle class forms a significant portion of society, creating a sense of stability and shared purpose that's hard to ignore. Take public spaces, for instance. Beaches, parks, and libraries in Australia are open to all, fostering an environment where inclusivity thrives. This is a stark contrast to some parts of the US, where private beaches, gated communities, and exclusive clubs can sometimes create a sense of division. While exclusivity exists in Australia, it's less prevalent and less starkly defined. Education reflects this ethos too. In Australia, public schools across regions maintain a relatively consistent standard, ensuring children from different income levels have similar opportunities. In the US, by contrast, school funding often ties closely to neighbourhood wealth, which can perpetuate cycles of inequality. Of course, Australia isn't perfect. Challenges with inequality still exist, particularly among Indigenous communities. However, the cultural ethos of a fair go, where everyone deserves a chance to succeed, sets a tone that promotes inclusivity and collective progress. So there you have it. 15 reasons why Australia outshines America in ways that truly matter. Whether it's the safety, lifestyle, or opportunities, Australia proves that the grass really is greener on the other side. If this got you thinking or dreaming, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share to spread the word. Because everyone deserves to know why life down under is worth talking about.